I'm coaching a VP right now, and he showed up to one of the sessions and he said, Mike, we've been working together for a little while now. What are my blind spots? How do I reach the next level? I thought for a second and I told him, to really reach the next level, you have to embrace uncomfortable situations, tense situations, and you need to learn how to navigate them with skill and compassion and power. And he looked at me, he's like, you nailed it. As leaders, we have to face these difficult conversations all the time. And in this episode, we're going to give you everything you need to master it.
Welcome to Leadership Mindset 2.0. Practical neuroscience and psychology to transform you from a tactical doer into a strategic leader. Here is your host, former social entrepreneur of the year and coach to some of the world's top executives, R. Michael Anderson.
I'm going to start off with a vulnerable story from my own life. There were times when I was running my main software company where I would get a lead in. Somebody would tell me about a CFO or a CEO of a fast-growing company that I could contact to potentially purchase my software. Now, what I would do is I would put that lead on my to-do list, and sometimes I would research the company. And I remember a few times, the company was much, much bigger than our largest client. And I would say, oh, this would be great if we could get them as a client. It would be our new largest client. It would really stretch us. So I'd put it on my to-do list, and I wouldn't do it that day. And the next day would come, and maybe it's a Friday. I'm like, oh, I don't want to call them on the Friday. Nobody likes to get a cold call on a Friday. Monday would come around, and I'd say, oh, I don't want to call them on a Monday. Nobody wants to call like this on a Monday. And then by the time Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday come around, I'd say, oh, it's too late. Maybe I shouldn't even call them. I procrastinated a potentially very lucrative phone call with pretty much no risk. Why did I do that? I did that because I didn't want the fear of rejection. I didn't want it to, for example, this prospect to say, oh, you don't have any customers as big as us. You're too small of a supplier for us. I didn't want to be embarrassed, etc. As leaders, we need to get good at confronting uncomfortable conversations head on. In a lot of ways, that is our job. One person said, the real job of a CEO is just to go from one uncomfortable conversation to another. And you know what? I can see that. So you, dear leader, you need to develop this muscle because it is a muscle. Because the more you get good at it, the easier it becomes and the less you'll avoid it. Because almost everybody I know, leader or non-leader, avoids these type of conversations. And the funny thing is, and you may know this, that there's only a certain amount of time where it even is an uncomfortable conversation. It's just the fact that you need to bring it up, that you need to hold somebody accountable. You need to call something out. And there are ways we can reduce the chance that there's going to be a big blow up. So in this episode, we're going to go and we're going to talk about where that occurs in leaders so you can identify and recognize it in yourself. We're going to talk about why that happens psychologically and neurologically. We are going to talk about ways to overcome it. And this is a crucial skill. Also, dear leaders, I wanted to tell you one more quick thing. I told myself I'm going to have more fun on these podcasts, so I'm going to wing it a bit more. My intros and things used to be written by AI. I'd do a summary, I'd do the intro and the outro, but I'm just going to do them from my own intuition, my own heart. I'm going to roll with it. So it might be a little more sloppy, but you're probably going to get a little bit more of me. And another note, all the podcasts, none of them have been scripted or AI. That's just me talking. So you're going to get more of me, like it or not. But here we go. I went back and looked at some old conversations over the last actually couple years to see where this really shows up. Because I want you to see where it comes up in yours, because our ego does not like the fact that we do this. And so you may say, oh, I do it here and here, but I want to get clear that you also do it here, here, and here. So let's go through some of these. I had one business owner admit that she would rather run a mile before tackling someone head on or holding them accountable because she disliked disagreement. This is the nice guy syndrome. We are not there to be liked. We are there in a way to be respected, and we are there to get performance out of people. And when people aren't performing, sometimes they may not like us because we need to tell them that. And you know who people like and respect? Are the people that show up powerfully and hold them accountable. But sometimes there is some uncomfortableness to get to that place. I work a lot with leaders on underperformers. So I had another business owner who was struggling with an underperformer for months because they were not getting agreements on commitments, and when they were not fulfilling those agreements and those commitments. And other people around the organization saw that, and it was creating real issues because this employee had been there for a long time, and he felt loyalty to him. Look, I understand loyalty, and being part of a business is not a family, because a family stays with each other no matter what. I have some members of my family who I don't agree with their morals and their ethics and their work habits, etc., and I still love them. When you're at work, it's a team. Because what a team is if somebody's not doing their job, then they get replaced. Now, if somebody's been with you for 20 years and they're having an off couple months, maybe they are having a family issue or etc., then you want to have a conversation with them and support them on getting back. But if they're not going to be open, if it's consistent, if it's holding the rest of the company back, if it's holding the rest of the team back, that's your job to address it. And that's what this business owner did. And he got so many people coming up to him afterwards saying, thank you. A lot of people have a fear of being like a dictator, and they want to let people do their own thing. Well, and I talked about this on previous podcasts, that your job is to give guidance. Your job is to get the best out of people. And to do that, and this is an engineering manager I'm thinking of right now, he didn't want to hurt the leader's feelings or approach on their technical knowledge. But you know what? It's your responsibility. And you need to define the relationships that this is going to happen. Another managing director that used to be an engineer was too nice, and he would let senior techs talk him out of necessary precautions to avoid discomfort of a 10-minute, basically, argument. And he went through, actually, my leadership mindset accelerator that's starting up here quickly. And he held somebody to account, and it saved the client because they needed to do all the steps and they were trying to skip steps. And so it's up to us to make sure we're bringing these best practices and that people don't wiggle out of it. I had another business owner noted that in his 90-day planning, when tasks weren't done, he would simply let them roll over to the next 90 days to avoid the discomfort of challenging his heads of department. So is that you? Do you let people slide? And how is that holding your leadership, the team, and that person behind? Why do we do this? Well, like I always talk about, it's our ego. Our ego is here to keep us safe. Our brains are neurologically wired to avoid change and conflict. And trying to change these behaviors cause stress, leading the ego to resist. I'm not saying this stuff is easy. It's necessary, though, and the more you do it, the better you get. I was just an ally program with one of my coaches, Rich Litvin, and he talked about holding the tension. How as a coach, you want to bring up tense situations, deliver them, and be okay with the tension. And so to you, it's okay to enter into a conversation that you know, or you have a good idea, or you think possibly could lead to a difficult back and forth. And that's okay. You're still safe. Being okay with being unsafe and playing around with how your ego handles that. This also comes from what I call conditional parenting. Now, we don't want to spend too much time on this, but oftentimes we are parented to be perfect. Meaning when you do really, really good, your mom and dad or whoever raised you was like, oh, that's great, Michael, you're amazing. And when you weren't perfect, they were like, oh, what could you do differently? And so we get conditioned to only enter into things when we know we can be perfect. I have a whole lot more on that, though that's a lot where perfectionism comes from, but that's also where procrastination comes from, because we don't know how these conversations are going to turn out. So it's easier just to avoid them. Now, also, there's this lacking unworthy loop. The ego holds a misidentification with itself as lacking. It always thinks it's lacking. And it can use harsh judgments to filter perception, making us feel we don't belong in, for example, high-level discussions, or are frauds, or that we're wrong, etc. And so that's another way our ego is working against us. And it all comes down to being okay with taking these risks. So how do you overcome this avoidance? I have two foundational things: the ego authentic self we just talked about, and then the ARC process. So let's do the ARC process. So ARC stands for awareness, response, compassion. So the awareness is, where am I avoiding discomfort? You need to slow down and ask yourself, where am I avoiding it? What's the real issue? What needs to be addressed? What conversation do I need to have? How am I going to frame it? And how do I enter into that? And I won't go into the whole conversation roadmap here. That's for another time or in the book. But your pre-frame is very important here. And that is why you're setting a meeting with somebody. And so whenever you're going to set a meeting with somebody, they want to know what it's for. So there needs to be some thought in that. So you have the awareness, you set the meeting, and then you move to response. And what I want you to focus on is when you enter into these conversations, you're really conscious of your energy. And what do I mean by that? It's like your state of being. For example, if somebody hasn't delivered something consistently over the last couple weeks, you most likely want to go in there with a curious energy. If you go in there with, hey, you're an idiot, you're screwing stuff up, why are you doing this? That's going to make them defensive. And 90% of the time, you don't want them to get defensive. You don't want to attack them. So 90% of the time, you're going to want to go in with curiosity. You're going to want to ask questions. And though when you do this, you want to make sure that you stay on point, because they probably, good chance they're going to be evasive. And this might look like, hey, Mary, we need to talk about some things here. I'm just curious, the last 3 weekly reports, you were 2 days late on them. And again, when you give this feedback, you always want to be very specific, not the last couple, the last 3. You were 2 days late. That's because you can't argue with that. Or you're like, hey, the last couple times you've been a little bit late. Doesn't have the same gravitas as the last 3 times you were 2 days or more late. And I was just saying, hey, that's normally not like you. What's going on? And then she might go, well, I have a lot going on. I said, well, okay, let's slow down here because I'm here to support you. So let's talk about where these are in your priority list and what else is holding you back from getting them done. And so see, what I did is she tried to avoid it and get out of there and make it a quick conversation, but I'm here to really uncover the deep reason. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll do it. Well, hold on a second. This really has affected me. So let's just talk about where this is at in your priority list. So you see what I'm doing is I'm making her stick with the scenario instead of just fluttering off. And my voice never gets raised. I never get angry at her. I never make it personal about her. I'm just questioning and being curious. Now, I said you do that 90% of the time. Honestly, 10% of the time, when somebody has consistently messed up, then I get angry. And it's okay to show a bit of anger or some frustration because sometimes they need to be woken up by that. There's different personality types. People respond differently in different situations depending on different things. And so if I've reminded somebody about something 3 times, then I may be like, look, I've told this to you 3 times. What are you not getting? I may say something like that and confront them because you know what? I need to be respected. The timelines need to be respected, whatever it is. And they need to know I'm serious about this. It's okay to show some passion, some frustration, etc. Now, of course, you have to use your judgment and discernment of when and how that goes. And you also don't want to just probably shout at them at the top of your lungs or anything, but it's okay to like challenge them in that moment, normally after you've done some of these curiosity things. And, I find when I come to someone with this curiosity and I have them stick with it, I help them come to a great resolution and they're very, very happy. And that happens a great amount of the time. And so where I might have thought this is going to be a discomfort situation, it's actually a comfortable situation, and they've grown as a person, they're more effective, I've earned more respect, etc. And then the third C in the ARC process is compassion. And so as you go through this conversation, probably it'll go well, some may not go well, but it's all right, they're not all going to go well. Or you might have said, hey, I could have handled this and that better. Give yourself some compassion. Your victory here is bringing it up to them. And the more you do this, the better you're going to get of navigating that. And if you haven't done this often, it's going to take you a couple times to learn it, but it's a necessary skill. So give yourself this compassion of maybe not being perfect, thinking of something else later, etc. Now, I'll give you a couple more tactical rewiring tools on this. Frame it as an experiment. I talked about this before. I have a book called The Experiment. If you have an uncomfortable conversation coming up, just be like, look, I'm going to try an experiment on this. I'm going to try to do it this way. I'm going to listen to Michael's podcast again and give it a whirl. And then I'm going to take a couple minutes to reflect on what went well and what didn't go well. During one of my accelerators or the GLC, pop me a question. Hey, this went well, this didn't go well, or how do I do this? I'll answer it on one of my Q&As or what have you. And those are just different tools to do this. And remember, this is your job. And if you just imagine yourself as this powerful yet compassionate, empathetic, curious leader, you will go a long way. Okay, leaders, that's the podcast for today. Hopefully you're understanding your next level as a leader. To step into these, ask the powerful questions. When you ask these powerful questions of people, give them time. Let the silence do the work. Ask the question and then just be quiet. If there's a minute or two that they're processing, that is their way of getting a great answer ready for you. So as you sit on a computer screen, face to face with these people, having these conversations, just stay in your power. Stay in your authentic self. And remember, your authentic self is powerful. It doesn't let yourself get steamrolled, doesn't play with avoidance, etc. Stay on target, come to a resolution, hold them accountable. Because at the end of the day, that's what your team needs. And that's what people deep down really, really want. I know this is difficult. This can be difficult, but you're doing great. You're learning this. You're applying this. And I know no matter what uncomfortable conversation you have in your future, you have everything you need to be successful. Okay, now here's the challenge for this episode. What's that one conversation you've been avoiding? Who's the person in your life who you know this conversation is due? Maybe it's somebody on your team. Maybe it's a peer. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's an investor. Maybe it's somebody in your personal life. Just figure out who that is and then compose yourself. How do I want to go into this? What do I want the objective to this conversation to be? How do I want my energy through this? How do I want to start the conversation so that it sets it up for success? Then put it on your calendar. Put it on your calendar right away. Schedule it. Schedule a meeting, whatever you need to do, and go have that conversation. Look, I know these things aren't easy, but these conversations are your job. And I know they're uncomfortable, but you will get better with them with practice. So go out there, have these conversations, get people on the right track, get your team on the right track. And I know you have everything you need to be successful right now. So go out there and just know that you got this. If fear and self-doubt are keeping you stuck as a leader, if you still experience imposter syndrome, if you sometimes don't raise your hand and speak up in meetings, if you're not quote unquote playing offense with your career, putting yourself out there, developing strategic relationships, and taking the necessary steps to continue getting ahead, whether it's your career or scaling your business, then I have exactly what you need. Myself and Shannon Sedlacek are hosting a 2-day leadership intensive in Montreal, Canada on October 2nd and 3rd. In this powerful 2 days, you're going to be led through a series of exercises where you are going to learn how to develop your relationship with fear. Fear is natural. Fear, in a way, is good. But what you need as a leader is tools and skills to work with that. Because if you want to keep moving up and moving forward in life, you're still going to experience fear. We just got to give you the tool set to work with it. If you want more information, go to rmichaelanderson/intensive. We're hosting a reception the day before. If you get there on the Thursday, the day before October 1st, you get a chance to hang out with me and Shannon for a little while before the real work starts on the Friday and the Saturday. This is ideal for leaders who really want to invest in their growth and love the in-person format. This is not virtual. This is us sitting in a really powerful room. In fact, we're calling it the bravest room in Montreal. So if you're interested at all, go to the link. If you have any questions, if it's right for you, if you're right for it, drop me a note. We'll figure it out. This is limited to 10 spots, and we already have 5 accounted for. So if you're interested, make a move now because it is going to be a powerful event that you're going to want to make sure you're there for. I'll see you in Montreal.